All right, welcome to today's TOC meeting. We've got a couple of items on the agenda, and I've not figured out how to resize this window, but it's fine. Let's start with Daniel. You want to talk to us about branch protection?
Yeah, so we've had a discussion in Slack, and some changes have been made since I originally made this post. But especially when it comes to movement toward AI, especially if we want to increase AI adoption around docs, I wanted to discuss maybe loosening the branch protection around Copilot's branches, and I think we've got Dependabot pretty much sorted, but it'd be nice to extend this so that we could run these alternate applications.
Oh, is Dependabot working now? So I had a PR out and for removing branch protections. We haven't made a decision on that yet. But is Dependabot working okay for folks now? Thought that was still an issue, but maybe I haven't been paying attention.
I think Dependabot can't update its own branch still.
Okay.
And then there's also a problem of Dependabot will open a PR to bump a few things, but we're not getting reviews to get those in. And or we run into an issue where a bump has a signature change, so somebody needs to take ownership to fix it, but it's not happening, so the PR just sits there and goes stale.
Okay. Yeah, I think you've talked about this in the past. Those are the sort of situations where I would love to have just like Dependabot and Copilot work together, and then have a ready to merge PR test passing, and then we can get reviewers to merge it.
Yep.
Does anybody have more context on the history of branch protections and what risks there might be if we loosen them for Copilot and Dependabot branches?
I was wondering, is this a requirement from CNCF? I remember seeing it's recommended when we were doing like the governance review, the branch protection stuff.
It is, branch protections are recommended / required for, I think, release in main branches. I don't know, because we have branch protections on for every single branch on the repo. I don't know if that is a... Yeah, so that's the problem, right? So Dependabot and Copilot will create branches on the main repo, and then because we have a bot, a prow bot that turns on branch protections for every single branch, they're not able to update their own branches.
Okay, so what we are proposing, if there is no strong, if it's not required by CNCF governance staff, we're just proposing relief that requirement on the release branches where we cut releases, but the main branch, we would lose the branch protection up.
Yeah, the state that was actually desired was that no one should ever be creating branches in the Istio repos at all and should always use forks. The only reason we're not doing that is because we couldn't figure out how to actually configure it to do such a thing.
Right. So like Copilot and Dependabot can't own a repo. So they have to do all of their work on the actual project repo itself.
Is that how it works in projects that are actually properly locked down, like Kubernetes and things like that?
I think you went on mute, John, if you're still talking.
Oh, is that? Yeah, I finished talking.
Oh, that was a question. Sorry, I thought you were saying it's how it works. You're asking how it works.
Yeah, is that how it works? I don't know. Maybe they don't use Dependabot. I have no clue.
That's actually a good question. I don't know if they use Dependabot or not. I can check on that. That's a really good question, actually. I do know that Kubernetes is not like Copilot, so they're definitely not optimizing for that workflow. Just check the Go mod of Kubernetes and see
They do not use Dependabot on the Kubernetes branches. At least what I can find.
Yeah, it looks like it's all manual. Yeah, it's all manual. Dependabot. So they don't have this problem. One thing to keep in mind with this is that if we there is no way in GitHub to say that only the bots can access these repos, access these branches. So in theory, somebody, if they're looking at our test infra config, they could create a PR. They would be allowed to create a PR or create a branch on the Istio repo using Copilot / or whatever. Without branch protections. Are they able to push to branches? I'll put it like that.
I would think that if we can't lock this behavior down to the bots that we intend to allow, then it's probably not one that we want. Totally understand if we were to say we have Dependabot and Copilot, each of which should be able to create branches and push to them like that, that's totally reasonable. But if that means that we have to open that behavior up to the public, then that seems problematic, especially like when Copilot opens up a pull request. If that means that anybody can push to that branch, then anyone can modify that pull request while it's being reviewed.
So there are options for, like, it depends on the attack vector. There are options for how we could adapt to that reality. But I do agree with the general point that it's a departure from our current sort of security posture when it comes to branch protections.
Keith, maybe we should reach out to GitHub and ask if there are best practices for this.
Yeah, I have asked, haven't gotten a response back. If you've got other contacts, that might be helpful.
Yeah.
But as I played around even in the UI, there did not seem to be a way to say like Copilot can push to this branch or even Dependabot, because it's weird. Copilot and Dependabot are bots, but they sort of adapt. At least Copilot adapts the user's identity for a time, and it's kind of weird. So yeah, we can try to look into that. I think it's a good decision point, though, if it turns out this is not something that's supported by GitHub or they don't plan to support it. Are we okay with saying that we're just not going to allow Dependabot and Copilot because it will require changing the branch protections security strategy?
I'm not opposed to making any changes to our branch protection strategy, but if I've understood the conversation correctly, this means that we've opened up so that anyone can create a branch, and of those created branches, anyone can push to branches. I would say that is not a good trade-off. I hope that there's a better way of doing that. Dependabot's been around forever.
Yeah, so today anybody can create a branch, I think. Any maintainer, is that right? I'm trying to think. I think anybody can create a branch on Istio.
Not the public, maybe maintainers.
Yeah, maintainers can only.
Okay, only maintainers. Okay,
again, it wasn't desired. It was just a accident of how we have things set up.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, the current thing is that maintainers can create branches, but you can't make any pushes to branches after it's been created once the bot runs. The way it would work, if we turn off branch protections, then yeah, Copilot. Well, actually, hold on. Take that back. It might be anybody, because how does Copilot and Dependabot, how are they able to create branches?
They might have special, like there's Copilot special, so I don't know.
Yeah,
Dependabot, but Copilot for sure probably can bypass permissions and things.
Yeah, it's I definitely have to double check that. Because before the branch exists, there's no protection there. So it might just be like a push. Yeah, I don't actually know how that works. I'll take your word for it though. I'll double check. But yeah, if somebody created, if after Copilot created a PR or Dependent created a PR, any user would be able to push to that branch. Maybe we could make it maintainers actually. Actually, yeah, we could do. I think we could do that. And so that the Istio maintainers group can push to that branch.
If we can lock the behavior down to maintainers, I think that resolves my concerns.
Another potential option, we can have Prow actually invalidate the approvals if a commit goes in after the approvals happened. So
Yes.
even if somebody does push to Dependabot's branch, then it won't merge until it's been reapproved.
Yes, that is an option. We should do that.
Whoa, hold up, but you can only do that for everyone, right? You can't say just for Copilot or something.
You can. It's a branch protection setting, so you can do it just for Copilot and Dependabot branches, I believe.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was an option that you can either do it globally or per branch.
But the per branch gets added like an hour later on the cron job, right?
Well, this
It's
is
like
the
eventually
approval,
consistent.
so it's a tied config, so it's on the approval level.
And it's actually pretty fast. It's not an hour. It's like from what I've seen, it's like 10 minutes or so when those branch protections get added. So it's a matter of basically making sure nobody approves it before that time is able to elapse. And then somebody would have to, after the approval, be able to push something. Ian, I think you had a hand. Sorry for cutting. Okay, I didn't hear anything, but yeah, I couldn't hear you. Okay. So to recap, Mitch said if we could allow only maintainers to push that resolve his concerns, and then John with the knowledge, with the understanding of the assumption that we can require dismiss stale reviews for just those Copilot branches. What does that do for your concern?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to me that that would resolve my main concerns.
Yeah, I'm fine. Like I would just prefer in general that there was no branches at all on Istio at all, but I don't know that we can actually get there. So this is a fine compromise probably.
Ian makes a good point. The rule might apply when it comes to requiring PRs for pushes. That rule would only apply to the destination branches of the source.
Yeah, that's probably true. We had this exact same issue in another project.
That's a good point. Okay, twisting it on its head a little bit. What if we actually required a PR for new pushes to that branch? So Copilot Dependabot opens up a PR initially, then branch protections get added, but then any further changes would have to be PR'd in. Does that actually help things? Yes, no, maybe.
That means that if Copilot or whatever bot opened that branch wants to make modifications to their PR, They have to create a PR to make the modifications to the PR, right?
Yes, that's the unfortunate aspect of it. So you would need to effectively, yeah, you would need to effectively, never mind. That's the settings we already have now. We already require PRs into our protected branches. So today, when Copilot opens a PR, I can create a PR to edit Copilot's PR, but it doesn't actually move the needle much at all. So that's actually current state.
That sounds problematic, but we don't have to fix everything today.
Yeah, it just doesn't move us anywhere. All right, we've been talking about this for 20 minutes. Mitch, let's you and I talk to GitHub, see if we can get answer from GitHub about how to approach this. Maybe what we can add the feature to their roadmap, we'll see. And we'll try to come here for an update. In the meantime, I'd encourage folks and tell other maintainers and approvers, try to prioritize and pay attention to the Dependabot PRs that open for your subject area, test and release, as well as there is a explicit group of folks who own go.mod. I think it's like me, Lynn, John, Stephen Landau, and some others. We should make sure we pay attention to those PRs. We should actually probably have a specific owner for go.mod to assign it to test and release, just to try to widen the approver pool a bit, if it's not there already. Anything else before we move on to the next topic? All right, Ian, is your mic working?
Is it? I had to restart
Yes,
Chrome.
it is.
All right.
Yes, we're good to go. Take us away.
Yeah. So, I had mentioned in a working group the idea of removing the landing page on Istio.io's getting started that asks you to make a decision between the sidecar data plane and the ambient data plane. I think the main concern there is that we would perhaps create the impression that we're dropping support for sidecar or something, which I don't think we really want to do. So we need to be a little bit careful there. And then there was also some concern about if there are any sort of functionality gaps that we desperately need to close before doing that sort of thing. And so I wanted to bring it up here and see what the TOC's take on that was.
Yeah, I think for getting started, it makes sense that we should be more active in steering new adopters to ambient mode. We do still have some work to do in terms of migration. I think we've identified that as the largest gap. But for getting started, these are users who are probably not looking at migration because they've already started if they need to migrate. So that makes sense to me.
Do we need some proactive language on the rationale for this? Because I think Ian brings up a good point that we've been seeing a lot of concern and hesitation about project health when it comes to the container registry migration, and also concerns with sidecar. I don't know. I'm wondering if it makes sense to try to be, even if it's a couple of sentences about, if you're starting fresh with Istio, ambient is what you should be getting started with, and then move to sidecar when you've got the need, just to prevent any impressions that we are deprecating or moving towards deprecating sidecar.
Where would we put that notice?
That is a good question. There are different options. one could be, I think probably the best option would be to have some language on the page itself, on the getting started page, to say Istio ambient is the most recommended, is the recommended data plane mode for new users. For existing sidecar users or for advanced use cases, here's the sidecar documentation. Like, just try to have some language to talk about the reasoning behind it versus just a ambient everywhere sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we do have those wordings, pretty much what you said on the quick start page, which I thought was the purpose of this quick start page, to kind of educate people. You want to use the ambient in general, but if you have these cases, exactly what you said. So I think that's the purpose of this page, in my opinion. Also, I don't know where to put this thing.
Okay, so I guess there's some mixed support. There's some folks who would like to leave the decision page up front. Maybe we need to think about how to express the availability of sidecar on a ambient focused getting started page in a pretty straightforward way. But do we just want to leave the interstitial page then for now?
I'm looking at it now. I don't love some of the language here on the traditional model. Most of the energy is going towards the improvement of ambient mode. Although sidecar remains fully supported, you can do a little bit better, I think. I do like, the thing I like is the in general recommend, let me actually share this tab. In general, we recommend new users start with ambient mode. It's faster, cheaper, easier to manage. There are advanced use cases that require use of sidecar mode. Maybe remove this closing gaps thing just because it's last year, but also I don't think erasure is necessarily our goal as a community, and it sounds a bit like sidecar erasure.
What is it, Keith? What does erasure mean to you?
It means that we are trying to get to a point where you don't need sidecar, that we're trying to erasure is a bit such a strong word that you could call out. It sounds like, I guess, lack of a better term, deprecation. I'm reminded of the move from a while ago to when we deprecated the in-cluster operator. And for a long time, it said it's discouraged, it's discouraged, it's discouraged, like this red warning at the top. And even though it wasn't officially deprecated or removed yet, within a year or two of that banner being on the page, it was gone. And I don't want to in any way give the impression that sidecar's on that path. So that is more what I'm thinking about as erasure. We're trying to gently send sidecar into that good night. That's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I read this more as about a positive statement about parity. Parity and deprecation are not the same thing. We would like pretty much anyone who was using sidecar to be able to take their use case and migrate to ambient, maybe with a few edge case exceptions. But we want them to be able to. We're not signaling that they will be forced to, or that we're deprecating anything. Is there a way to make that statement clearly positive?
I think so. I think I can try to take some time and wordsmith it. I think where we end sentences, Like having positive statements about sidecar be their own sentence versus always sort of putting sidecar and ambient together will go a long way towards combating that impression, I think. So I'll take a action item to see if I can't just like, I've got some personal, I think, tweaks I could make to the page to make it a little bit better. But to Ian's general question, maybe not yet. I appreciate you bringing up the idea of moving the page, but I don't know, something in me is hesitant to move to ambient and with the current state of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess a more pointed question for the TOC. I think initially the goal was there wouldn't really be modes. Like you would just install Istio at some point, you would install the ztunnel and CNI, and you would have that functionality. But if you inject a sidecar to some workload because you need whatever client-side load balancing behavior, it just works, and you don't really worry about making this binary decision at the beginning. Is that still the end goal? And if so, does that help with the wording on this quick start page around feature parity and interoperability?
I think that is the end goal. I've been thinking along the same line. Right now, we ask people use ambient or sidecar mode. Can we just ask them to install ambient and using sidecars within the ambient mode? Would that be able to close the advanced user cases?
I mean, I think that would be awesome from a docs perspective and from a usability perspective. I'm not sure how close we are to being able to advertise that sort of interoperability. We have some tests out there, but there are some known rough edges and I think some testing gaps that we would need to close, but it would drastically simplify the getting started experience for users. I think that's a huge win.
Would it require the interrupt if they're just using sidecar in ambient mode without interrupt? Would that lower? I understand interrupt doesn't work, but if we're just advocating them to use sidecar in ambient, what I don't know if that would introduce risks to their existing advanced user cases that may not be, that worked in sidecar, but not in sidecar in ambient mode.
There are definitely some issues there. So for example, sidecars today won't send to waypoints. Which means that if you've got an auth Z policy enforced at a waypoint, the sidecar will completely bypass that and not enforce that policy.
So that would be an
fair,
interrupt, right? Interrupt scenario.
Yeah, that is interop for sure. Also, to be fair, you can tell ztunnel I only accept traffic from my waypoint, so it's not like it's a security bypass, right? You would
That
still
is true. That is true.
deny it. Maybe that's not what you want, but
that is true. I forgot about that. So yeah, if you tell ztunnel interesting from waypoint, that will work. Yes. I think it was on the topic of the interrupt story. I definitely do think that having just the split brain of two modes would be getting away from that would be so beneficial to the user. I think. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I think that for some subset of sidecar functionality, let me rephrase. I don't want to go that direction. I think there is no way that we're going to be able to do full interrupt with the totality of sidecar features. There's just, I think the approach that we took, and I think rightly so with ambient, was to try to correct or adapt some gaps with that sidecar mode had, or some decisions that end up becoming debt. We didn't want to bring those over into ambient mode. I think that's the right decision. But it does mean that not every user's sidecar deployment is going to work correctly, interrupt with ambient without having to make any changes. For one, I think like gateway API targeting is sort of the basics. The other big thing is like scoping for export to and things like that. So I think that what we should probably be, one option for making this story happen, irrespective of the interrupt story, is to sort of have a canonical, like, make stronger statements about the APIs that we are prioritizing. So like, I have to workshop this because it's not going to sound great, but the proposal for doing something like this would be, hey, if you want to take advantage of the newest Istio features, have the best chance of migrating to sidecar mode, Gateway API is the way to go. Gateway API is the canonical API for new Istio functionality. And make, a strong statement about that. Make strong statements about, here's how you should use service entry if you don't want to end up with a headache. If you want to use it in this other configuration, you can do that. You can do export to in sidecar, but that's not going to be extended or enhanced in any way moving forward. Instead, we're collaborating with the upstream Kubernetes community and Gateway API, yada, 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 to make, tenancy and things like that first-class cases. Like, I think there are a lot of these sorts of things like metrics merging. A lot of things that exist in the sidecar world, in the pre-ambient world, I should say, that we're having to think really long and hard about how we're going to continue the roadmap for those features. And I think finding a way to communicate that to users so that we can get to a place where we just have that set of functionality that we know can work. We can prioritize testing for that, and make sure that interop works with that. And everything else can sort of be will continue to work in sidecar mode. Ambient is sort of up in the air. But that's come to my mind. What do folks think about something like that?
So I dropped a link to a PR that's open in the chat. And I think one of the things that we really need is not like the question of feature support, I think, is somewhat settled, of like, we'll never be able to implement all of the sidecar stuff in ambient. But what we need clarity on is like, how do we expect a service with a client sidecar to interact with a ambient service behind a waypoint Z tunnel? Like, should the sidecar route to the waypoint? Should the app like not route through the sidecar? And should we like reprogram the IP tables rules or something like that? Like, we need to define what those patterns are. And then also for the inverse of, should an app that's coming from a Z tunnel, should an ambient app with a Z tunnel, how should that interact with something that has like server-side sidecar? We just need to like define that behavior, because right now it's pretty fuzzy.
That probably just works today, as long as your sidecar was injected after you enabled the ambient controllers. You can probably send a client through a waypoint to something with a sidecar. I would expect that to work. The gap is, if the sidecar is the client, it will ignore the waypoint, like Keith mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I think we also just we need to take that maturity step of moving from I think it should work to clearly documenting for like migrating users or users that have like dual sidecar ambient needs, of like, how does it work in practice?
Yeah, I think that's the big gap, is the documentation, and then that specific behavior if you have a client-side sidecar. So
yeah, I know some folks from okay.
Sorry, I was going to say, to your point, I have been thinking about like some recommendations around sidecar, and maybe a safer way that we can handle sidecar. It would work for ambient, and then optionally you could like replace the export to behaviors of sidecar with it. So I'm working on a doc for that. I'll hopefully have something like pretty soon to share. It's not 1:30 timeframe, obviously, but maybe it's something we can work on and think about for a 131.
that actually dovetails nicely with what I was about to say. So I know Mikhail Krinkin and I think Francisco from Red Hat with some others are going to be talking about some of that tomorrow on the migration case. And I think talking about this exact same policy application use case. Probably get you an invite to that if you would like, or maybe they can start a thread in Slack just to capture, put the outline to the idea. One of the things I've been thinking about was potentially like having a workload waypoint for and have sidecars into a workload waypoint to prevent double service oriented policy. But I haven't thought super deeply about it. But it's probably useful to just start getting these different options into a doc somewhere and start discussing. So if you're going to work on something, that will be great. And we can start like iterating on alternatives and stuff within there as well.
Yeah, I'll try to get something pretty quick for the idea for safer service entry behaviors.
Cool.
And get that on the share. And yeah, let's start up a Slack thread at least on it. That sounds good.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you. I'll make sure that gets done. All right. Any other topic comments? Let me go back and find this tab. Any other comments on this topic before we move on? Okay, last topic on the agenda is mine. I had a doc about Istio governance a while back that we talked about. One of the suggestions was to merge UX and environments working groups together, just because there's a lot of overlap, and like Istio, CTL, Helm, all this were the same thing. Any last calls for objections for doing that? If there are no objections, I'll probably try to get that done this week. Going once, going twice. All right, I'll start setting up PRs to get that done then. That's the end of our agenda for today. Any last topics before we give everybody 15 minutes back?
Oh, sorry, I kind of forgot about this, but a few working group meetings ago, we were talking about ambient 503s and just investigating it. I took a look. I'm fairly sure it's just an issue of the data plane not updating on time. And I think the solution is you just add a pre-stop hook, and that gives like add pods a pre-stop hook, and that gives users some time for the all the proxies to get the updates on what workloads exist and which ones don't. The original author tried to do that, but they were using the sleep binary, which I'm pretty sure wasn't present on the image they were testing on, so it was effectively a sleep 0.
Yes, I remember this thread you and I were discussing. And so TLDR, the data plane doesn't learn about the pods being terminated in time, and so it's sending requests that end up getting a 503 because it's terminated. So the pre-stop hook of 5 seconds or so allows the application to send connection close or do things like that, like act on the sig term. And it also gives Istio D as a control plane time to propagate the changes to all of its proxies.
There must be a waypoint in this mix, yeah? Like what else would 503?
Yeah, so I think the main one that they talked about was ingress. But yeah, this also happens actually on Sidecar. I tested it. But Yeah.
Okay, I
We
see.
didn't see it on sidecar
anything
because
that
of
can-
retries.
Sorry, Keith.
No, go,
Yeah, I was
go
going
ahead.
to say anything that can send a 503 can probably do a retry.
Yeah, and some of the 503s is like the H-bone 503s, I think. But I think the main complaint they were having was waypoints or waypoints and ingress gateways. And those can, one, retry, and two, if you just add the pre-stop hook, it kind of it gives time for the eventual part of eventual consistency to manifest.
We have a default retry in Istio that's applied for services. Do you know if it applies to the H-bone tunneling?
Probably not. I don't think we do any retries for H1 tunneling.
Okay, that is, would that make a meaningful difference? It feels like it might. Because that's where we're seeing the 503s, right?
The H1 tunnels on the ingress gateway.
Yeah, like on outbound. So the outbound H-bone tunnel to backends. Like Z-tunnel could retry that. Waypoints could retry that. Ingress gateways could retry that. For the ongoing implementations, like we've got to reset before the request was sent out, so like we can make sure they're safe.
Maybe I think a lot of this happens when an H-phone connection is already established and you're attempting to reuse it.
Ah, interesting. So
So from like a Z tunnel perspective, the 503 is almost irrelevant. We would be retrying a connection that the client made. And that would only ever be safe if the client had never transmitted any data, regardless of any like H-bone error codes coming back.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, that makes sense.
We just need to.
Go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Finish.
I was gonna say we just need to be like careful in our thinking about it and not rely like so much on the HTTP stuff in Z-tunnel.
Right, like even the ongoing implementation, the reason we were able to start retrying on 503s is because I added this retry on criteria or whatever it's called reset before request, and we do that logic in Envoy. So we check to see if any bytes have been transmitted, and if not, there's a flag to where if we get a reset, we can automatically auto retry that. So that's something we could do in Z-tunnel, but to your, I think, someone's point, if these are happening from the reuse of failed connections, then or reuse of connections where there's failures, then it's not gonna make a difference, I don't think.
Yeah, because I think what happens is that when you remove an endpoint from a cluster, actually, I don't know how it works. But my point is, without the pre-stop hooks, I see the 503. With I don't, and it seems to make sense when I compare it to the XCS and whatnot.
Okay.
So I told the author to try that, specifically to not use the sleep binary because it's probably not present on the container he's trying to run sleep on, and we'll see if he has any replies. But yeah.
Okay, that should be probably, because like I said, it's not an Istio, it's not an ambient thing. It's a general networking.
Well, yeah, I'm sure this could happen in Kubernetes itself too, if if the CNI doesn't get the service updates in time.
Right.
It could very much send traffic, albeit TCP, to a service that is just going to reject it.
Right. Or any ingress gateway could run into the same thing too when its control plane gets delayed. Okay, so we can probably just document best practices or like FAQs or things like that
Yeah.
about the pre-stop hook, and that might help a ton actually. Okay, thanks for that update. That's helpful. Let us know if that user responds with anything.
Uh-huh.
All right, anything else? All right, then I will see you folks at Wednesday's working group meeting then. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Cheers.